The private wing of Westbridge Medical Center didn't look like a hospital. It looked like a museum that smelled faintly of antiseptic and polished wood. Every room had floor-to-ceiling windows, Persian rugs, and recliners that cost more than most people's rent. Room 704 was at the far end of the corridor. Quiet, heavy. Inside, Henry Whitmore, 83 years old, white, and once one of the most powerful businessmen on the East Coast, lay paralyzed on the left side of his body, staring at the wall. He hadn't spoken a word in 6 days. Since the stroke, he'd refused physical therapy, refused to eat unless fed, refused eye contact. Even with his billions, even with the top neurologists flown in from Germany, the prognosis hadn't changed. Henry could recover partially, but only if he participated. He didn't. The nurses whispered about him in the break room. Some said he was already brain dead. Others said he was faking it to avoid facing his children, who hadn't come. None of them wanted his room. He had a reputation, a razor-sharp temper, racist slurs muttered under morphine, a hatred of incompetence that had left more than one junior nurse in tears. No one lasted longer than 2 shifts, until Lena. Lena Moore moved with the kind of grace you only learn when people watch you too closely. She was in her late 20s, tall and composed, with deep brown eyes that rarely gave away what she was feeling. She'd transferred to Westbridge from the city hospital after earning her RN and working the graveyard shift for years. On paper, she wasn't special, but in practice, Lena was unshakable. She read charts like puzzles, listened more than she spoke, and knew how to place an IV line with her eyes half closed. And more importantly, she didn't flinch, not when patients screamed, not when families wept, not even when Henry Whitmore refused to look at her. Her first shift with him was a Thursday night. She walked in just after 7:00 p.m., reviewed the notes, adjusted the lighting in his room, and greeted him calmly. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore. I'm Nurse Moore. I'll be taking care of you tonight." No response. He didn't move, not even a blink. She didn't push. Lena changed his IV bag, checked his blood pressure, ran a silent neurological check, and adjusted his pillow. He turned his head, only slightly, away from her. "Understood," she said simply, and dimmed the lights. That first night, she sat by the door with a tablet in her lap and read for an hour, glancing up every so often. She wasn't sure if he noticed, but she stayed. That was the point. Over the next few days, she established a quiet rhythm. He would ignore her. She would care for him anyway. No small talk, no attempts to charm him, just steady, professional care. She brushed his teeth, adjusted his blankets, wiped his forehead with a warm cloth. He didn't look at her once, but he didn't push her away either. That was something. One evening, as she inserted a fresh line into the IV port, she leaned slightly forward, and the chain around her neck slipped out from beneath her scrubs. A small silver locket. Simple, a little worn. The room was dim, but the light caught the engraving on the back, and Henry saw it. He blinked once, then locked his eyes on the necklace. His lips trembled. His right hand twitched. Lena didn't notice at first. Then his voice, barely audible, dry and cracked, broke the silence. "Where? Did you get that?" She froze. It was the first time he had spoken. She looked down, then instinctively tucked the locket away. "It was my mother's," Why? His breathing hitched. His face drained of color. That locket, he whispered. It was Jasmine's. Lena stepped back. Her heart thudded in her chest. She'd only heard her mother's full name in documents, never from a stranger. She narrowed her eyes. How do you know that name? Henry's eyes flooded with tears. I knew her. A long time ago. Jasmine Moore. Lena didn't speak. She couldn't. He gripped the blanket with his working hand, his fingers curling. She gave me that locket before I left. I didn't want to, but, he choked. My father. He said I had no choice. She stared at him like he'd grown another head. You knew my mother? He nodded slowly. I loved her. Lena backed away until her knees touched the armchair. Stop, she whispered. Henry pressed a trembling hand to his chest. I tried to find her after my father died, but she was gone. I didn't know she had a child. I didn't know. I didn't know. His voice broke. His body trembled violently. Are you? He swallowed hard. Are you my daughter? Lena couldn't speak. Her hands moved almost automatically. She opened her bag, pulled out her wallet, and unfolded an old, faded photograph. A younger Jasmine, arms wrapped around a baby. She held it up. Henry looked, and something inside him shattered. His chest heaved. His face twisted in pain. The monitors began to beep wildly. Lena screamed, Code Blue, room 704. Doctors burst into the room. Paddles, oxygen, epinephrine. Henry Whitmore's body arched once as the defibrillator hit. And Lena, the nurse, stood frozen by the wall, unable to tell if her hands were shaking from adrenaline or from the truth that had just detonated her entire life. They stabilized him. He didn't die. Not yet. As the cardiologist left and the night quieted once again, Lena remained. She sat by the bed, numb. Her eyes drifted to the man who, 20 minutes earlier, was just a patient. Now? She didn't know. She touched the locket. She remembered her mother's soft voice when she was little. One day, this necklace will mean something to you, but don't chase the story. Let it come to you. Lena had thought it was just poetry. Turns out, it was prophecy. She reached for Henry's chart. This time, she wasn't just reading it as a nurse. She was reading it as something else entirely. The next morning, Henry Whitmore opened his eyes to the sound of soft jazz playing on a portable speaker near his bed. It wasn't hospital protocol, but Lena had brought it anyway. She sat in the corner of the room, not in scrubs this time. It was her day off. Yet here she was. His mouth was dry, throat raw from the intubation the night before. But his gaze found her instantly. He blinked slowly, then rasped, You came back. I'm not here as your nurse, Lena said, her voice flat. I'm here because I have questions. Henry nodded weakly. Fair. There was silence between them, heavy, but not hostile. I don't know what to call you, she said. You can call me Henry, he replied. Or nothing, if that's easier. She didn't smile, just sat forward. You said you knew my mother. I loved your mother. Lena crossed her arms. You said that too, he coughed. I was 23. She was 19. I met her in Georgia, near my family's summer estate. She was working part-time at the lake resort. Lena swallowed. And? We spent that whole summer together. It was everything. She was smart, funny, brave. His voice cracked. And my father hated it. Her jaw clenched. He found out, Henry continued. Called her a distraction. Said she was just looking for a payout. I didn't listen. Not at first. But then he threatened to cut me off. To ruin her. He looked at Lena now, eyes rimmed red. And I folded, like a coward. Lena looked down at her hands. She never told me much, she said. Just that he was someone powerful, that he walked away, that she never looked back. She was right to, Henry whispered. I don't deserve to be in this room with you. Lena didn't argue. She took a deep breath and pulled something from her bag. A second photograph. Jasmine in her 40s, holding Lena's hand outside a small house in the Bronx. She worked 3 jobs, Lena said. Cleaned offices at night. Taught me to read with library books. Never complained. Not once. Henry studied the photo, his face contorted, not with disbelief, but regret. She raised a brilliant woman, he said. I didn't bring this for flattery, Lena shot back. I brought it because you looked me in the eye and asked if I was your daughter. Henry nodded. Am I? He hesitated, then reached for the drawer beside the bed, fumbled with an old wallet, pulled out a photo, folded, worn, and almost translucent from age. Jasmine, young, smiling, and him, with her, arms around her waist, a moment frozen in time. I never married, he said, never had children, not that anyone knew of. Lena looked at the picture, then back at him. There were too many coincidences, too many truths lined up in silence. Still, she asked, You're sure? He nodded, eyes misting. I would bet everything I have left. The days that followed blurred in strange, quiet moments. Lena returned to work, but took Henry's care privately, off record. Only a few attending doctors knew why. They talked, not every moment, but more than before. She asked about his company, his philanthropy, his lack of family. He asked about her childhood, her dreams, her choice to become a nurse. I always thought about medicine, she said once, checking his vitals. But not because of you, because of her. My mother used to say healing people was the only way to fight back. He smiled faintly. She was always stronger than me. I know, Lena said. One evening she found him sitting up, sketching with shaky hands. She walked in, curious. He held up a page. It was a crude outline of the foundation of a house. I thought maybe you'd want to build something in her name, a free clinic or a school. I could help. Lena looked at the drawing, then at the man she still wasn't sure how to name. I'm not sure money fixes this, she said. It doesn't, he said quickly, but silence doesn't either. One night, well after midnight, Henry whispered, I spent 60 years making money and 60 seconds realizing what I missed. Lena didn't respond. She just listened. That was all he wanted. At the end of the second week, Lena walked into the room to find a document folder on the table beside his bed. Inside was a new will. 90% of his assets, properties, investments, patents, transferred into a trust under her name. She stared at it. You can't buy me, she said calmly. I'm not trying to. You barely knew me. You knew her for 3 months. Henry nodded. And I've been punishing myself for that ever since. She closed the folder. I don't want your money, she said. You want to do something for her? Build a fund, a scholarship, a clinic. but my name doesn't go on a single cent." Henry looked at her with a mixture of pain and pride. "Then what do you want?" She reached for her locket. "I want this to stay in my family. I want her story to be known, and I want it never to happen again." That night, after Lena left, Henry wrote one more letter. He addressed it, "To my daughter, should she ever forgive me." It was never mailed, but it stayed in her file, waiting. The final week of Henry Whitmore's life came quietly. His condition worsened, not unexpectedly, but steadily. His speech slurred, and the pain became harder to manage. The doctors increased his morphine drip. He knew what was coming. So did Lena, but neither of them rushed it. Each day she sat by his bed, sometimes talking, sometimes just watching the city lights flicker through the wide windows. There was peace between them now. Not quite forgiveness, not quite closure, but peace. That was something. On the fourth night, he asked for her. Lena came in after a double shift, eyes tired, hands still steady. "I need you to do something for me," he said. She nodded. "Take the locket," he whispered. "Wear it, always." She frowned. "It's already mine." "No," he said, smiling faintly. "Now it's mine to give." The next morning he was gone, peacefully, in his sleep, a soft beeping that faded into silence. Lena didn't cry right away. She stood by the bed for a long time, holding his hand, her other hand resting over the locket, now warm against her chest. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was carrying a question. She was carrying an answer. The reading of the will came a week later. His lawyers laid everything out: money, properties, art, all placed into a newly created foundation, the Jasmine Moore Fund, dedicated to funding scholarships, health care access, and safe housing for single mothers and black families. Zoe, his former assistant, and a group of advocates were named as trustees. Lena was offered the role of director. She declined. "I want this to be about her," she said. "Not me." But she gave one instruction. "If there's a logo, make it her initials, small and strong." 6 months later, Lena stood on the steps of a new clinic opening in the Bronx. A mural of Jasmine smiled above the entrance. Dozens of families gathered, some already receiving care, others just curious. Lena spoke at the ribbon cutting. She told them about a woman who raised her with strength and quiet dignity. She didn't mention the millionaire. She didn't need to. But as the cameras clicked and applause rang out, she touched the silver locket at her throat. Not as a wound, but as a shield. Lena walks down the sidewalk in the early evening light. The sun dips low, painting the sky in orange and gold. The locket glints briefly on her chest, no longer a question, no longer a relic, a symbol of love, of loss, of a story finished, and a new one just beginning.